Okay, today we are going to be looking at a problem where we are given the zeros of a function. So here's our zeros. We're going to have a -3, 1/3, and a 1 plus I. We're also going to be given the condition that p of -4, it's hard to see there, it's a negative in front of there, equals 676. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to get this into factored form. So to get it into factored form, we have, first of all, we have a 0 of x equals -3. So we say, well, if x equals -3 and we add a 3 to both sides, then in factored form, we have x plus 3. Okay, so that's your first factor. Our second factor, we have x equals 1/3. So to get that into factored form, we would have to multiply both sides by 3. Those 3's would cancel. We'd bring down 3x equals 1, and then subtract a 1, which would give us 3x minus 1 equals 0. So that's our second factor. Now here we have a 1 plus I, and this is a complex number. So complex numbers always come in pairs. So we have a 1 plus I, we also have a 1 minus I. So if I'm putting that in factored form, I have a pair here. So I have x minus 1 plus I, and I have x minus 1 minus I. So before I get that into strictly parentheses, I need to take this minus sign and distribute it. So I'm going to have here an x minus I, or sorry, 1 minus I, and here I'm going to have x minus 1 plus I. So these are my 4 factors here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these factors. I'm going to erase a little bit, get some room. And then we're going to multiply these out. All right, so the first thing we're going to multiply out is x plus 3 and 3x minus 1. All right, so we're going to FOIL these. We have x times 3x is going to give us a 3x squared. X times -1, -1x. 3x times 3x, positive 9x, and 3x times -1 gives me a -3. If I combine my two middle terms, I have a 3x squared plus 8x minus 3. So that is going to go back into parentheses because then I'm going to multiply it by the product here. So here I have trinomial times a trinomial, so each term in the first trinomial needs to be multiplied by each term in the second trinomial. So here I have x times x, that gives me an x squared, x times -1, -1x, and x times I, positive xi. Then my next term, -1. So -1 times x, -1x, -1 times -1, positive 1, and -1 times I, -1i. Then my third term, -i times x, -xi, -i times -1, positive 1i, and -i times I, -i squared. Okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. So we have an x squared by itself, x squared. We have a -1x and a -1x. Those are my only x's, so I have a -2x. I have, let's see here, positive xi, negative xi. Those guys are going to cancel each other out. I have a positive 1 by itself. Then I have a -1i, positive 1i, Those guys cancel each other out. And then I squared, negative I squared. So negative I squared is negative 1. So minus negative 1, which turns into plus 1. So if I really took this here, this is really just plus 2. So we're going to make that plus 2. All right, so my two factors here, now I have 3x squared plus 8x minus 3 times x squared minus 2x plus 2. So again, I need to make some room. So we're going to do some erasing. And we're going to rewrite these. Let's rewrite these in blue. Okay, so we have 3x squared plus 8x minus 3, times x squared minus 2x plus 2. Okay, so trinomial times a trinomial again. We're going to go ahead and multiply these. So we're going to start with 3x squared times x squared. That gives me a 3x to the 4th. Then I have 3x squared times negative 2x. That gives me a negative 6x cubed. Then I have 3x squared times 2. That gives me a positive 6x squared. Then I go to my next term, 8x. So we have 8x times x squared. That's going to give me a positive 8x cubed. I'm going to put it underneath the x cubed term, so I'm lining up my like terms as I go. Positive 8x times negative 2x gives me a negative 16x squared. And then 8x times 2 gives me a 16. Then my last term, negative 3. Negative 3 times x squared. Negative 3x squared. Negative 3 times negative 2x. Positive 6x. Oh, I forgot to put an x with that one. Then I have a negative 3 times a positive 2 gives me a negative 6. Okay, so I've done all of my multiplication. Now I want to combine all of my like terms. So bring down your 3x to the 4th. Then you have 6x cubed plus 8x cubed gives you a 2x cubed. Then you have 6 minus 16, that's negative 10, minus 3, negative 13x squared. 16x plus 6x, I get a 22x, and negative 6. So this is the form that it would be in if I was not given this final condition here. So this would just be with the zeros, and it would tell me my leading coefficient is just 1. But we're given this condition here, so we need to take this one step further. So I'm going to go ahead and erase these, and we're going to take this, and we're going to take it one step further. So what this is telling me to do is to take this function and plug a negative 4 in. When I plug a negative 4 in, my output is 676. This is going to end up giving me my A value. Okay, so the value that's really in front of all of this as a multiplicative. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to take the negative 4, we're going to plug it in, and we're going to do that in red. Okay, so we're going to say that if I plug a negative 4 in, my output is 676, and then I have A, and then I have 3, and we have negative 4 to the 4th plus 2, negative 4 cubed, minus 13, negative 4 squared, plus 22 times negative 4 minus 6. We're going to do all of that math inside here, and then we're going to solve for A. Okay, so first of all, what do we have inside the parentheses? Just singular values, so we go to exponents. Okay, so negative 4 to the 4th is going to give me a positive 256. So this is 3 times 256. Then plus 2. Negative 4 cubed is a negative 64. Minus 13. Negative 4 squared. Positive 16. And then bring down your 22 times negative 4 and your minus 6. Okay, now we have 3 times 256. That is 768. So we have 768 plus, oh, nope, that's not plus, just kidding. Let's get that eraser there. Minus, because a positive times a negative, 2 times 64, so minus 128. 13 times 16, and it's a negative, so minus 208. 22 times negative 4, negative 88, and then minus 6. Okay, do all of that. So 768 minus 128 minus 208 minus 88 minus 6. That gives me 338. All right, bring down that A. And bring down that 676. Solve for A. Divide by 338. Well, it just so happens that 676 divided by 338 is 2. So I get A equals 2. Now I have my A value. I am almost to the finish line. So I have my function and I have my A value. So now I'm going to get my final function. Just going to erase this here. All right, so my final function is going to be p of x equals 2 times 3x to the 4th plus 2x cubed minus 13x squared plus 22x minus 6. Then we're going to multiply or distribute that 2. So we're going to get p of x equals 6 x to the 4th plus 4 x cubed minus 26 x squared plus 44 x minus 12. That is my final function, and I am done. So remember, this is your function, your zeros. We can check it in our graphing calculator with our zeros. -3, 1/3, 1 plus I, 1 minus I. The only zeros you should see in your graphing calculator are these two, because we do not graph our imaginary numbers, but this is going to be a quartic function with our 4 zeros. You should be able to see the -3, and you should be able to see one between 0 and 1, a little closer to the 0, not quite to 1/2 with our function. Thank you.